December 1963. A small jazz club in Boston. Miles Davis walked in through the back entrance, trying not to be noticed. He was there to hear someone. A kid. A 17-year-old drummer people kept telling him about. Miles didn't usually take tips from other musicians, but 3 different people had called him in the past week, all saying the same thing. There's a kid in Boston you need to hear. So Miles flew to Boston. Alone. No announcement, no fanfare. Just walked into a small club on a Tuesday night to see if the rumors were true. The kid's name was Tony Williams, high school senior, still living with his parents, playing drums in local clubs to make extra money. Miles found a seat in the back corner, ordered a drink, waited. When Tony Williams walked on stage, Miles almost laughed. The kid looked 12, small, skinny, baby-faced. Sitting down at the drum kit, he looked like he was pretending to be a drummer for a school play. Then Tony started playing. Miles stopped laughing. Within 30 seconds, Miles knew. This wasn't just a talented teenager. This was a genius. This was the future of jazz drums. The way Tony played wasn't just technically perfect. It was revolutionary. He wasn't playing the drums like everyone else played drums. He was having a conversation. He was telling stories. He was painting pictures, and he was 17 years old. Miles sat through the entire first set, not moving, not drinking, just watching, calculating, making a decision that would change jazz history. After the first set ended, Tony put down his sticks and headed backstage. He was sweating, tired, happy. It had been a good set. The crowd liked it. Then someone tapped him on the shoulder. Tony turned around and nearly fell over. Miles Davis was standing there, in this small Boston club, looking at him. Tony's first thought was, this can't be real. Miles Davis doesn't come to places like this. His second thought was, I'm in trouble. I did something wrong. His third thought was, oh my God, it's actually Miles Davis. Miles looked at him for a long moment, not smiling, just looking. Then he asked, how old are you? Tony's voice came out higher than he wanted. 17, sir. You in school? Yes, sir. High school. I'm a senior. Miles nodded, processing this. A high school kid playing drums like that? Then Miles said something that Tony Williams would remember for the rest of his life. Come to New York tomorrow. You're in my band. Tony froze. His brain stopped working. Those couldn't be the words he just heard. What? Miles repeated it. Slowly, clearly. Come to New York tomorrow. You're in my band. Tony's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Miles continued. I'm putting together a new group. Best musicians I can find. You're the drummer I want. Tony managed to say, Mr. Davis, I don't know if I can. Why not? I have school, and my parents, and I live in Boston. Miles interrupted. How good do you want to be? The question hung in the air. Tony stammered. I want to be the best drummer in the world. Then you need to play with the best musicians in the world. That's my band. So come to New York tomorrow. Tony felt like he was drowning. This was Miles Davis. This was the offer of a lifetime. This was everything he'd ever dreamed about. But he was 17. He was in high school. He still had a curfew. Mr. Davis, I have to ask my mother. Miles stared at him. Tony braced himself for laughter, for Miles to walk away, for the offer to disappear. Instead, Miles said, What's her number? Sir? Your mother's phone number. What is it? Tony told him. Miles walked to the payphone in the hallway, dropped in a dime. Tony stood there, watching Miles Davis call his mother. This was the most surreal moment of his life. After a few rings, Tony heard Miles say, Hello, ma'am. This is Miles Davis. I'm calling about your son. Tony couldn't hear his mother's side of the conversation, but he could imagine it. Confusion. Suspicion. Probably thinking this was a prank. Miles, yes ma'am. The musician. Miles Davis. I just heard your son play. He's brilliant. I want him in my band. Pause. No ma'am, this is not a joke. I'm standing here with Tony right now. He can confirm it's me. Miles held out the phone. Tony took it with shaking hands. Mom? His mother's voice, confused, concerned, protective. Tony, is that really Miles Davis? Yes, Mom. It's really him. He wants me to move to New York and play in his band. What about school? You have 3 months left until graduation. I know. But Mom, this is Miles Davis. This is his mother. Let me talk to him again. Tony handed the phone back to Miles. For the next 10 minutes, Miles Davis had a conversation with Tony Williams's mother. Tony could hear bits and pieces. Yes, ma'am. I understand he needs to finish school. No, ma'am, I'm not asking him to drop out. He can finish in New York. We'll make sure of it. Ma'am, with all respect, I'm offering your son the opportunity to play with the greatest jazz musicians alive. This is his education. This doesn't happen to people, ma'am. When it does happen, you have to take it. I wouldn't be here if he wasn't that good. Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure he's taken care of. No, ma'am. I'm not going to let a 17-year-old genius waste his potential in Boston when he could be making history in New York. Finally, thank you, ma'am. Here's Tony. Miles handed the phone back. Tony's mother. Her voice different now. Still worried, but accepting. Tony, if you want to do this, you can do it. But you finish high school. You hear me? Yes, Mom. And you call me every week. Yes, Mom. And if this man doesn't treat you right, you come straight home. Yes, Mom. She paused. Then I'm proud of you, baby. Go play with Miles Davis. Tony hung up the phone. Turned to Miles. Still not sure this was really happening. Miles, pack tonight. Be in New York tomorrow. Here's the address. He handed Tony a piece of paper with an address written on it. Show up at 6 p.m. We're rehearsing. Tony. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I won't let you. Miles cut him off. Don't thank me. Just play the way you played tonight. That's all I need. Then Miles walked out. Just like that. Walked out of the club and disappeared into the Boston night. Tony stood there holding a piece of paper with Miles Davis's address on it. Tomorrow, he'd be in New York. Tomorrow, he'd be playing with Miles Davis. He was 17 years old. The next day, Tony Williams took a bus from Boston to New York. His parents drove him to the bus station. His mother cried. His father kept saying, "Make us proud." Tony carried one suitcase and his drumsticks. He was terrified. When he arrived at the address Miles had given him, he realized it was a rehearsal space in Midtown Manhattan. He knocked on the door. Miles answered. Didn't say hello. Just, "You're here. Good. Come meet the band." Tony walked into the room and nearly fainted. Standing there were Herbie Hancock on piano, Ron Carter on bass, Wayne Shorter on saxophone. These weren't just good musicians. These were legends. These were the best jazz musicians in America. And Tony was 17. Herbie Hancock looked at him. "How old did you say you were?" Tony. 17. Ron Carter whistled. "Miles, this kid still needs permission to go on field trips." "Miles, he doesn't need permission to play drums." "Tony, sit down. Let's work." What happened over the next few hours changed Tony Williams's life. Miles didn't treat him like a kid, didn't coddle him, didn't make allowances for his age. Miles treated him like a professional, like an equal, like someone who belonged in that room with those legends. They played. Miles would start something. The band would follow. Sometimes Tony knew what to do. Sometimes he didn't. When he didn't, Miles would stop and say, "Try this instead." Not "You're doing it wrong." Not "You're too young for this." Just "Try this instead." After 3 hours, Miles called a break. Herbie came over to Tony. "Kid, you're the real thing. Welcome to the band." Tony wanted to cry. He was 17. He was in Miles Davis's band. He was playing with Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter and Ron Carter. This was supposed to be impossible, but it was happening. Over the next few weeks, Tony moved into a small apartment in New York. His mother made him promise to finish high school, so Miles arranged for him to complete his coursework by mail. Tony would spend his days studying algebra and English literature. His nights playing with the greatest jazz band in the world. It was the strangest education anyone ever had. 3 months later, Tony graduated high school. His diploma was mailed to his New York apartment. He never walked across a stage, never wore a cap and gown, never went to prom. But the week after he would have graduated, he played at the Village Vanguard with Miles Davis. And he was brilliant. Within a year, people weren't calling him the kid in Miles's band anymore. They were calling him Tony Williams, one of the greatest drummers alive. By the time Tony was 20 years old, he'd recorded multiple albums with Miles, including some of the most important jazz recordings in history. The second great quintet, Miles Davis, Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter, and Tony Williams, is considered one of the greatest jazz bands that ever existed. And their drummer was a teenager. Years later, someone asked Miles, "Why did you hire a 17-year-old high school student?" Miles said, "Because he could play. I don't care if you're 17 or 70. If you can play, you can play." "But weren't you taking a risk?" "He was just a kid." "No," Miles said. "The risk would have been not hiring him. Genius is rare. When you find it, you don't ask how old it is. You just make sure it doesn't get away." Someone else asked, "What did you see in that club in Boston that made you so sure?" Miles thought for a moment, then said, "I saw someone who wasn't playing drums. He was speaking. The drums were his language, and he was saying things I'd never heard before. Most drummers, they keep time, they support the band, they stay in the background. Tony didn't do that. Tony was having a conversation with us. Tony was pushing us. Tony was leading. And he was 17. Which meant he was only going to get better. I couldn't let someone else hire him. I couldn't let him waste time in Boston playing clubs. He needed to be in New York, with the best, becoming better." Tony Williams played with Miles's band for 5 years, from age 17 to 22. In those 5 years, he revolutionized jazz drumming. He changed what people thought drums could do. He changed what people thought a drummer could be. And it started because Miles Davis heard rumors about a kid in Boston who flew up on a Tuesday night, watched one set, made a phone call to the kid's mother, and said, "Come to New York tomorrow." Tony Williams died in 1997. He was only 51, heart attack. But in those 51 years he changed music forever. And it happened because when he was 17, Miles Davis saw genius and refused to let age get in the way. The lesson isn't just for musicians. It's for anyone who's been told they're too young, for anyone who's been told they need more experience, for anyone who's been told to wait their turn. Miles Davis didn't care about age. He cared about ability. He didn't care about resume. He cared about talent. He didn't care about credentials. He cared about genius. When Miles heard Tony Williams play, he didn't think, "Interesting. Maybe in a few years when he's older," he thought, "I need him in my band. Tomorrow." That's the difference between good leaders and great ones. Good leaders wait for people to be ready. Great leaders see who people are and pull them into who they can become. Tony Williams was 17. He could have spent 4 more years going to college, 4 more years playing local clubs, 4 more years getting ready. Instead, he spent those years playing with Miles Davis. By the time his college classmates were graduating, Tony Williams was already a legend. Subscribe for more stories about genius recognized, potential unleashed, and what happens when someone believes in you before you believe in yourself. Miles Davis made a lot of phone calls in his life, but the call to Tony Williams's mother might be the most important one. Because he wasn't just calling to ask permission. He was calling to tell a parent, "Your son is special. I see it, and I'm not letting the world miss out on it just because he's 17. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for genius is get out of its way. Other times, the best thing someone can do is open the door. Miles opened the door. Tony walked through it, and music was never the same.